Hello, my name is Sharon Madigan and I'm Head of Performance Nutrition at Sport Ireland Institute. Today we have our interviews with our athletes from the Paralympic and Olympic Games and also with their performance nutritionists. So to introduce you to Bethany Firth, she's a GB Paralympic swimmer with an incredible list of achievements to her name. She's a multiple world record holder and is a 9 times Paralympic medalist. She's competed in London, Rio, and most recently in Tokyo, and she is also a world and European medalist. And we have Shirley McCay. Shirley is an Irish international hockey player and Ireland's highest capped athlete with a phenomenal 316 caps. She is recently retired after an amazing 15 years with Irish hockey, which includes 8 European Championships, a history-making silver medal in 2018 World Cup. Most recently, she's just returned from competing in the Tokyo Olympics. And we'll also talk to the performance nutritionists with both athletes, and that is Lorna Cooke and Julia Bone. Lorna is a registered dietitian and sport and exercise nutritionist. She has worked at the Sports Northern Ireland Sports Institute since 2011, and she has provided nutrition support to a range of athletes and coaches from a range of sports in both Paralympic and Olympic categories. Her current focus is within swimming, including providing support to Bethany, and she also works with track cycling, triathlon and boxing. Dr. Julia Bone is a registered dietitian and sport and exercise nutrition practitioner in the UK and an advanced sports dietitian in Australia. She completed her PhD at the Australian Institute of Sport before moving to Belfast, where she currently works as a performance nutritionist here in Sport Northern Ireland Sports Institute and also with the Antrim senior hurling team. She's worked with senior and developing athletes across a range of different sports, including athletics, basketball, judo and para-badminton, and most recently has been involved with the Irish women's hockey team and with Shirley in preparation for their first Olympic Games campaign. So congratulations on your recent winning, and maybe give us a wee bit of tell us all the medals you did win over the summer when you were in Tokyo, and maybe give us a feel for other medals that you've won in the past as well, Bethany.
Yeah, so I started competing when I was about 13 years old, so I was quite late to the sport, and then I competed at the London Paralympics in 2012, Rio 2016 Paralympics, and then Tokyo Paralympics there. So I have in total 9 Paralympic medals, 6 gold and then 3 silvers, so I haven't got a bronze yet.
So I suppose in terms of your preparations for Tokyo, how did they go, given some of the limitations and restrictions we had in the lead up to that, and I suppose the delay of the year as well?
Yeah, so I think it wasn't ideal for anyone. So it wasn't, especially if you were an athlete, with everything closing and not being able to train, and especially in my sport, being not able to go to the pool. So quite at the start of lockdown, we realised that the bike sort of really wasn't working for me, or it wasn't mimicking swimming as much for me. So me and my coach decided to come up with a different idea. So we actually got, it's not very fancy at all, but basically like this cheap paddling pool, and it was quite deep. And we basically tied me up with a bungee cord to the fence, and I would do some like training sessions in that. And like Northern Ireland isn't the best for weather, so it was freezing cold. But it was just trying to mimic something like swimming, and kept me moving and kept me ticking over, because at that point, at the start of COVID, we weren't sure if the games were going to happen that summer or would they be postponed or even cancelled. So at least that ticked me over for a bit.
And how, Lorna, did you link with Bethany in terms of the nutrition bit, or the other bits, I suppose, that maybe you were supporting her with around that kind of delay?
Yeah, I think like everybody, it was Zoom initially. Bethany obviously didn't have the pool time, so her training volume just dropped. And so that obviously had an impact on her nutrition straight away. Her energy requirements weren't as large, so we had to work on that. And I think you're used to routine, aren't you, Bethany? So in terms of what you eat and when you eat, you have a very good routine around your swimming. So that was something else that was knocked out.
And you mentioned there about routine. How did you work around that and change that routine, I suppose, for that period of time?
Well, we actually set up a weekly meeting. So we had S&C coach, we had physio, we had the coach, myself, and then a member of the GB team. And we spoke every week. So we were able to see what training Bethany was doing, and then adapt accordingly. We would have been in contact with each other and talked about, okay, your time in the pool is obviously much shorter because it's much colder, you're not doing the volume. So, right, let's adjust what you're having before you go into the pool and afterwards. And yeah, just going from there. Nothing was consistent, things were changing all the time.
Yeah, I think that was difficulty for a lot of people, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think you just had more time on your hands. You're stuck at home and you have a lot more time. So I was the snacker, wasn't I? I was constantly like, oh, kitchen snack time. So yeah, we had to come up with like a bit of a routine. So we chatted through that and basically got me a different routine, but like in the morning I would have this thing, and then in the afternoon I'd have this and this, and I worked better when I got back into the routine. And I think that's the easiest thing to do, just follow a plan. I think when I'm left to my own devices, I just go rogue. Just like, I don't know what to do.
During lockdown, you would agree that you mentioned it already about constant snacking, because it was nearly that boredom eating. So it was just coming up with new ideas and was trying to think of something innovative. So I sent you some recipes and you were going to upskill in the kitchen and do some cooking and get your dad to buy different types of foods.
And in terms of, I suppose, Tokyo and the preparations, it got delayed a little bit. There was lots of, I suppose, highs and lows within that. What was kind of some of the difficulties around the preparation, I suppose, leading into the cancellation maybe, and then beyond that as well?
Yeah, I suppose one of our major difficulties was that we qualified so far in advance of the games, even with the postponement. So we qualified in November 2019, which gave us quite a long run into July 2021. So it was a lot of waiting and hoping. I suppose for some of the athletes that qualified maybe a little closer to the games itself, it was maybe a different experience. So for us, there was just a lot of anticipation. I suppose in 2019, we were in a really good place and really looking forward to the summer after. And I suppose around March, April time, that's when the pandemic hit and we heard about the cancellation / postponement of the games, which was really disappointing for everyone, particularly I suppose for us older athletes who maybe that's going to be our last hurrah. So a lot of really tough decisions and a lot of individual work done, I suppose, to make sure that we did everything that we could to make sure that regardless of the decision that we were ready come what may.
And that's tricky because it's not an individual sport, you play as a team. How did you manage that?
Yeah, it is, and a lot of what we do and a lot of our motivation, comes from being part of a team and being in it together and going through those highs and lows as a group. Even the tough conditioning sessions and the being out in the middle of winter and that training environment is spurred by having 25 teammates around you who all want the same thing. So there's a lot of, I suppose, Zoom calls for everyone, a lot of texts and conversations that were had with friends and teammates and coaches and support staff. It was a really tough test of everyone's motivation, but I think the thought of going to an Olympic Games for the first time was enough motivation for everyone.
And in terms of the nutrition or the dietary, I suppose, challenges around that, what was some of the things that you noticed that maybe was something that was tricky or difficult to manage?
For me personally, it probably gave me a chance to just really focus on my nutrition. Obviously, everything kind of came to a standstill for a few months, and with that came to stand for me in terms of my work. So I actually was able to get into a really good routine of taking care of myself, of taking care of the little things outside of day-to-day life and rushing from one thing to the next that needed to be done. So I was really able to just, get my weekly shop done, get in and out as quick as I could, hold my breath the whole time and get what I needed. But no, it did. It actually gave, I suppose it probably gave nearly everyone a chance to regroup and really focus on those little 1%ers that were going to make a big difference.
And Julia, what did you notice about that time in terms of maybe some of the requests or the focuses that you had to push towards or move towards?
Yeah, I suppose because obviously, as Shirley said, there was just a big change and almost a halt when it came to like the team training. So a lot of questions about how much they should be eating when they weren't, I suppose, moving as much, but still making sure that they were fueling for the sessions they were doing, and also, I suppose, trying to support their immune system as well. And also had some practical questions just around, all right, what are some fruits or vegetables, how long do they last? So like to try and reduce, I suppose, supermarket visits. So trying to develop resources to help support doing that for them as well.
And did you have many COVID questions around that in terms of immunity and shopping risks and all of those?
Not a huge amount. We had done education previously sort of on supporting the immune system just for the winter seasons. So in terms of trying to make sure that they're getting sufficient fruit and vegetables, not having taking supplements such as vitamin C or zinc unless they felt, I suppose, the onset potentially of a cold, but making sure that they were aware that that might not help with coronavirus per se, but still just good practice to have. And just again, those 1%ers like the sleep hygiene as well, and just the balanced diet.
And what about the requirements for swimming, Lorna? What are kind of some of the key messages around swimming, particularly for people that don't really work with swimmers?
I think the big thing with swimmers is the energy demand. It's a sport where when you're younger at the sport, you're maybe training once a day, but when you're at the high performance end, you have additional strength and conditioning sessions that you're doing. So Bethany could be training once a day. She could be training twice in the pool and one in the gym. So it does really vary. And a lot of swimmers don't realise how much they need to eat. They don't realise how many calories they need. And that can be a big message. It's don't compare yourself to other swimmers. Don't compare yourself to your peers. It's all about how you feel. And alongside that, their carbohydrates, because that's obviously what's fueling their training. Their demands can be really high. So it's all about that regular eating pattern, fueling before and after training, and really fitting it in. These young kids right up to Bethy's level, they're maybe at school, they're maybe at college, they're maybe working. So it's really, really hard to basically plan and fit in all those calories throughout the day when you're maybe sitting in class.
And there's one big thing that comes to mind when I think about swimming. It's that like 5 o'clock start in the morning. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that in terms of even the night before and then the morning off? How do you work that in? How do you feel like eating a lot before you get into the pool, or how does that work for you?
No, not really. Like we noticed before that I would easily not eat before I went in the pool, and then you'd notice that I didn't have enough energy when I was in the pool, so you sort of have to like make yourself eat, for energy. And basically, like, we looked at food as being fuel instead of something that I wanted to eat or do it. I had to use it as more fuel. And that definitely changed when I started eating more in the mornings. I was performing a lot better in the pool, even though I didn't want to get up and eat because it's so early.
And in terms of dairy, how do you see that as being incorporated into that performance plan, Lorna?
Well, swimming in particular, because it's non-weight bearing, bone health is obviously really, really important, and maintaining good bone density and good bone health. So dairy products obviously are full of calcium, and we'd be recommending 2 or 3 portions per day. With swimming, I use it a lot with swimmers, especially younger swimmers who are new into competitive racing and really early morning training. They're getting up, they're struggling out of bed, straight to the pool, and they're saying, I don't have anything to eat before I train. So I always encourage like a yogurt or a glass of milk. Milk's great because it's got carbohydrates to fuel them, but it's also a liquid, so it's going to be absorbed nice and quickly. And in recovery, you've got the right balance of carbohydrate and protein to refuel and repair the body after training.
And what are the kind of main nutritional requirements in hockey?
Yeah, so hockey is obviously a high intensity sport, and they often would play lots of games back to back in a short amount of time. So I think with the Olympics, it was sort of 5 games or 4 games in 5 days. So you really have to be able to repeat the effort. So fueling and recovery becomes really important. And then with the heat in Tokyo, hydration was a huge factor as well, in trying to make sure that our players weren't going to overheat and they can stay cool as much as they could. So they could still be able to perform not only on that day, but the following day as well.
I think the education that we'd been given from Julia and the other support staff in preparation for the games was second to none.
And what did you do around some of the stuff for that heat and humidity and hydration? What were some of the kind of strategies?
Yeah, so I suppose in preparation we did a lot of work around the sauna and the heat chamber within the COVID regulations that we could at the time. So obviously that was difficult. We couldn't have too many in at the same time, but all of the camps, the training camps we had in preparation for the games were extremely well organised, and we were able to, you know, get our heat sessions in and get our sauna sessions and our hot baths and things like that, and things like, you know, our ice vests and our shakers and our slushies, and we really enjoyed the slushies pre-game.
I know that the travel to Tokyo was particularly gruesome. What were kind of some of the challenges there, or, you know, how long did it take you? When did you leave? When did you arrive? I think people don't know how long that it actually door to door.
Yeah, I think we lost a day of our lives, so we never got back. I think we were quite lucky on our stop off, and then whenever we arrived in Tokyo, that our testing took around, I think it took 3.5 hours, which we'd heard was going to take a lot longer, and I think did in some cases. But I think the timing of when we had arrived was sort of a few days before a large majority of the athletes were arriving in Tokyo. So it meant that we were sort of, we passed through that area quite quickly. So just really well prepared, lots of snacks. I suppose the hydration thing was important as well, just making sure that we had as much fluids in us as possible, and our electrolytes as well.
I think I was probably one of the ones that put the fear of God through people, because the boxing team took over 7 hours to get through. So I, in that waiting time, constructed a message to everybody else to kind of
It was passed on.
prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And how did you find the food when you went to Japan?
So it was good. So we went to Japan, and we went quite early. So we had a holding camp before we actually entered the village. Now in the village, the food was amazing. You could get like anything you wanted, like literally think of anything, you could have got it. They had like different sections. They had like a British section, a Japanese section, Indian, like whatever you wanted. But on our holding camp it was a bit of a struggle. So we had been to that holding camp previously with Team JB, and we had tested it all out, and then the chef changed, and we didn't realize the chef changed. So we came out there and it was very traditional Japanese stuff. So we had a lot of like chicken liver and chicken skin and like lots of stuff like that. Like I'm not a fish eater, and there was like octopus tentacles and like stuff. So I struggled a bit on holding camp with that.
I suppose we're lucky that being under the GB system, Bethany had a nutritionist, GB para-swimming nutritionist out with them at their holding camp, so they were able to get different foods in and adjust the menu, whereas if it had just been the team without a nutritionist, it would have been a totally different story.
And then there was also a situation when we had to isolate for a few days because someone tested positive in our group. Now, thankfully, we weren't like close contacts, so it didn't affect us. But for one day, we were basically in our room and the Japanese were delivering food. And it was the worst food I've ever had. So thankfully we had lots of snacks. We had like lots of porridge pots and like dried fruit and stuff that I had. And I was so glad I had them. I would have starved.
And clearly the preparation you did in terms of stuff with you was really important as well.
Our holding camp in Iwate, we had a liaison officer there who looked after our every need. And it turned out that that blueberries were a local delicacy there, so we were inundated with amazing blueberries, and so we had all really good nutrition there, and anything that they could have done for us, they did. We had a huge barbecue banquet one evening, and we had all the fish and all the protein, the meats, everything that we could have asked for. So their friendliness and welcoming nature just made it very easy for us.
And one of the things that I thought was interesting, dairy's not a massive food choice in Japan, and I thought we were going to struggle a little bit with that. We didn't. Did you have any issues with that, or was that, was there any problems with that when you got out there?
No, we actually didn't. There was always plenty of fresh milk, yogurts available. No, we were actually very lucky with our dairy. Yeah,
we would use flavoured milk a lot as a recovery strategy, particularly as kind of like stage 1 recovery pitch side, and then they'd have their meal later on as sort of stage 2. So I think we tried to find like Nesquik or something else to try and flavour the milks, so it was sort of similar to what they could get back home.
Did you have any links with the holding camp, Julia, in terms of the preparation piece?
Yeah, definitely beforehand, organising with the liaison officer, trying to make sure that the food would be appropriate, and also that there was some familiar foods for the girls as well. So I think I got a video on how to make porridge off Ruth with Martin, which I passed on to them too, and they were really good at really trying to meet our needs as well. So I kind of gave them a list of snacks that we would kind of like, and a lot of WhatsApps and emails and Zoom messages backwards and forwards to try and find the equivalents in Japan. And
because you weren't able to be there just at that time, what were the kind of things that you were doing remotely, I suppose?
Just checking in, seeing if the food was all right when they first arrived. I think there was a small issue a little bit with just the portion sizes, or they would just kind of plate out what they think one person would take at a time instead of just putting it all out. And I think that people thought there wasn't enough for everyone, so maybe not taking enough that they needed. So just small things like that. I wasn't out there, as you said, so I was just making sure that I'd communicated with the support staff that had gone out, particularly like physiology and S&C as well. We did a lot of the hydration monitoring and the slushy trials while they were training out there as well, and just checking in. But they managed to solve a lot of problems on the ground.
And what's your favourite dairy product?
Listen, I come from a farming background, so whatever it is, I'll have it. I enjoy yogurts, enjoy milk, anything dairy products, really enjoy it.
Have I one? So I, like Lorna will know, I love yogurt, cheese, milk, anything. We make a milkshake, sometimes like a lot of cheese on toast is good, yeah. I don't think I could pick one.
Okay, well, and how would you incorporate them? Do you use any of them pre or post training? How do you put them into your performance plan for what you eat?
Yeah, so I would have a shake every time after I'm in the pulse, I would, and then normally it's more protein after the gym, so we like a yogurt, don't we? So we'll add a few yogurts in, yeah.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is that everyone is incredibly different. So I would have spent a lot of time in my career really overanalyzing what everyone else was doing in comparison to what I was doing, or why is this happening to me? Or, look at what she's doing. But actually, in terms of everything, everyone is so different, and your body is so different, and what you and I need is completely different to fuel ourselves for what we want to do. So I think that was my biggest learning over the last few years, and with the help of Julie as well, just to try and tweak little things and find out what works for you, and not really to overanalyze, what everyone else is doing. It is all about your body, and everyone is different and has different needs. So that would definitely be my biggest learning, is just to take care of yourself and figure out what works for you.
I think for me, it was more not comparing, because I think people sometimes look at people in sport and they think they need to look a certain way or be this sort of lean. And I think, each sport, they look a bit different. Runners are really like lean, quite small. Swimmers are really broad and stuff. And I think for me, it was more not about being that sort of look, but more performance. Like, how did I perform? And me and Lorna talked a lot about where my healthy weight was, because you could drop weight easily, but then I couldn't perform down there. So I could look a certain way, but I wasn't able to perform. And I think for me, that was maybe a hard thing to learn, but probably the best thing that I learned.
And what's next? What, retirement? What, busier probably than you ever have been?
Yeah, I'm still heavily involved in hockey. So I work as a talent coach for Ulster Hockey. So sort of take care of all the performance programs at underage level. So still heavily invested in the sport, and just looking to, I suppose, give back and give the young people and the future stars for Ireland and beyond as much opportunity as they can.
So I got about 3 weeks off just when I arrived there, and it sort of let my head shower and just sort of taking what had happened, what I had done, been through the pandemic, like training in a paddling pool. But now we're back, and like we're refocused, and I've got Worlds this year and Commonwealths. I've never won a Commonwealth medal, so this is my goal for the next year.
That's in Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in Birmingham. So I'm really excited. And the games in Tokyo, we weren't able to have supports team, so I wasn't able to have my family and my coach and like Sinai there. So I'm really hoping that in Birmingham I'll be able to have them there, because like they're a big part of like what I do. So I'd like them to be there.